Radio Free Skaro!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Radio Free Skaro, episode number 981. I am Stephen in Edmonton.
We're in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
A big show today. Toby Hadoke joins the show for an epic chat about VAM, value added material, for those that don't speak the language of Dan Hall, long departed Doctor Who DVD producer, because the season 25 set is coming out at the end of this month being October in the UK, and looking for Dursley McClendon, who played Mike in Remembrance of the Daleks, is a feature documentary on that, and Toby Hadoke is all over that, and we talk about other documentaries that he has made, and including some future ones that he is not allowed to name, but he hints at a bunch of stuff that he's working on for the range. So there's lots of stuff being made for Blu-rays, is what we mean to say, and we'll hear about it later on in the show. How are you two doing, by the way? Just curious.
You've had some activities today. You're very tired. I'm also very tired.
Yeah, we're recording this. Chris, what about you? You tired?
Oh, yeah. Worked all day. Yeah,
worked all day.
I've been at a conference, a Raw business conference of some renown for 2 days straight. Luckily, only a block from me. So.
Oh, that's good. I've been working a rodeo. It is my first rodeo, as I've been telling everyone.
Which of us has listened to more BS? It's difficult to say.
I have seen more BS. Let me tell you, actual BS at the rodeo. So our energy level, we're doing our best to drum up some enthusiasm for you.
It's close to 10 and 11 here.
Yeah, on a Friday night. On a Friday night, kids. What did you
partying? We're partying hard, blabbing about Doctor Who.
Yeah, are we ever? Let me tell you though. So I stumbled on another classic British telly channel on YouTube. Listeners to the show will know that I adore watching old British shows, trying to pick out Doctor Who actors, and then later pick out crew members who worked on on Doctor Who as well. Seeing if I can stop. I found there's a show today that had a script editor, John Wiles, was on it. Written and directed by Alan Bromley, who did directed Time Warrior and Nightmare of Eden. It was called, what was the name of it? My Name is Harry Brent or something like that is the name of the show. Good for Doctor Who actor spotting, just so you know. Then, and this shocked me. There was a Granada TV production called Victorian Scandals. It's like an anthology show from 1976. And one of the episodes had Gareth Thomas in it, Blake from Blake 7, and a couple other actors. And then there was another one which had Maureen O'Brien in it. And I thought, oh, this is cool. I'll watch this. And it starts off with like a dinner table scene. Everyone's like out in front of the dinner table. Dinner scenes and party scenes where all the cast are in one scene. I can easily spot them, right? Let's go.
A lot of good directing too, usually.
Yep. Have a look at there. I spotted, that's a cutaway shot they put in later. And then there's these two people bring out this giant like cake or pudding or something like that, and I thought that's huge. Do people usually eat this? And then they take the cover off, and there's a naked lady in it.
What?
And she walks up and down the table right in front of Maureen O'Brien, who plays Vicky in Doctor Who. And then she walked, I'm thinking, AKA, this is on YouTube, which is all right.
Yeah, good point, yeah. I hadn't thought
but
of
it was
that.
Granada TV in 1976, so...
Well, they were libertines. All the boring people left for North America, as we know.
That's true, yeah. So, and then the coup de grace was me watching a thing that starred Charles Dance. It was also Granada TV, and I just by looking at the quality of the videotape and the haircuts, I thought this is 1985, and I got it bang on, baby. So.
I immediately thought of Morpheus going, "He's beginning to believe." That's you staring at the videotape,
yeah,
pulling cathode ray matrix symbols out of it.
Yep. People watch The Rings of Power or that witch show that's on the Marvel shows. You know the one I mean, the Agatha one.
It's fine. I've seen the first 2 episodes. It's entertaining enough.
I watch TV to judge which kind of videotape it's made on. So
you can watch TV or not for any damn reason you please.
That's true. That's true.
You are an adult. You don't have to justify anything to anyone unless it's illegal.
Yeah. Chris, you watching any other show? Are you watching shows to judge what kind of videotape they were made on, or are you a normal human being?
That's a trick question, man.
It is a trick question. I don't know. I'm watching stuff. Yeah. Bought the new Zelda game, so that's kind of occupying the free time I do have. So
right, that's cool.
It's fun, and beyond that, I don't know. Just watching stuff and things.
Watching Terry Nation Doctor.
Good old stuff and things.
Yeah. Exactly.
I have been doing that just for further homework.
Yeah.
There's, two series of Taskmaster happening right now.
2? What?
UK and Australia.
Oh my God.
Actually, and I'm told Sweden and Norway, I think, are also running new series right
now.
Are
you going to watch both of those too, or?
I haven't watched any of the Scandinavian ones yet, but somewhere along the way I probably will.
I actually have. Because I was forced to when in Sweden by my friends. Because they're big Taskmaster fans. I'm not complaining. It was fine. But
Taskmaster's awesome.
Is it the format of the show that you enjoy or the personalities? Because my guess would be the format, given that you watch multiple country versions of it.
I'll say in Sweden it was personalities.
Yeah.
It's a bit of both. I mean, for watching things like New Zealand, Australia, Portugal, whatever other ones I've watched outside of the UK ones. I mean, I don't know these people. I've never seen them before in my life. So you get to kind of know them to a degree over the run of a series, but the format, because they make them do really stupid stuff, and it's funny.
That's apparently no different than the international versions, because Sweden also does dumb things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a small devoted. I don't even know where people watch it in this continent.
YouTube. It's all on the YouTube.
YouTube, that's right. It's all on YouTube, like legally. It's not some guy just pirating it. Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, who would ever do that to an archive television show from the 70s made in Canada?
No one at all, and then have their YouTube channel yanked by the people who own the copyright for that show.
How dare they?
Yeah.
And of course,
I guess they dare.
Talking about the Star Lost.
New series of Bake Off is 2 episodes in as well. So
Bake Off. Oh, that thing's still going too. Man alive.
Season 15?
Is that still BBC? Is that's the BBC?
No,
right?
no. Channel 4.
Channel 4 took that over.
Moved to Channel 4 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I lose track of these things. What is that shot on 1-inch or 2-inch videotape?
I believe it's on HD or HD, depending on where.
Yeah. What's HD? Is that like 8-inch videotape?
No, God, no.
That's what's called a chip in the trades, or a card.
Yeah, a little SD card or something like that.
Oh wow, HD is shot on SD, man.
Wow, you're blowing my mind, man.
Yeah, right, man. You sounds like you're working for your car, man. Well, hey, that's here's the thing that's coming down the pipe this coming week. Doctor Who magazine issue 609 is happening, and with it, I'm curious to see how the digital version handles this. There is an additional target book for The Evil of the Daleks by Fraser Hines is included with the issue. Usually they have like a little separate bag for the physical version.
Full book?
Like the full book.
Damn.
Yeah.
Is in the magazine itself?
Is in the magazine itself. Yep.
That must be a pretty thick magazine.
Like, I don't know if it's like made in, because I know it came out a while back, and I think it was bigger because it had pictures in it or something, because Fraser Hines likes pictures, and so he's like, can we just skip the words and put some pictures in here?
Man after your own heart.
Right? I know. I'm thinking, you're just targeting me on this one. And so I don't know if they've made it, target book size, aka proper size, and putting it in a little bag. That's my guess is what's happened here. And they give it away.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So that's cool. But we'll see what happens if it's like in the digital version. Sometimes they'll put like extra things and it'll be like, just part of the not the PDF, but you know what I mean? Like on the digital
whatever
file.
format it's in, yeah.
Yeah. So
CBR or something, probably.
CBR.
I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't think it is because you can't download it. But so that's there. Paul McGann, India Fisher talk about their the live performance of the Big Finish thing that they did last month, which is pretty cool. Russell T Davies gives an update on the second season of Doctor Who, starring Ncuti Gatwa, and then there's also a big preview for the war between the land and the sea, Twiblas.
Dun, dun, dun.
I know, with Phil Collinson and producer Edo Federete. So
Newly married Phil Collinson.
that's true. On Instagram, we saw that he was. They had a big wedding recently, and Russell T Davies was there, and David Tennant was there, and Stephen Moffat, and Catherine Tate.
Catherine Tate, yeah. Who was the first one I saw in the group picture. I'm like, oh, that's Catherine Tate. What the hell?
Georgia Tennant was there. At least, and then that's about as far as my my recognizing
Christopher
skills
Eccleston
went.
there. No, really? Surprisingly,
he gave away Phil Collinson. He walked him down the aisle.
He crashed through the glass roof like Batman and
shoved
just
him.
went to town. First the royal family, and now you bleeps.
Exactly. That's how it happened. So,
as I refer back to our own lore about Christopher Eccleston's royalist killing tendencies.
That's right. That's right. He will actively target royals, apparently, if you leave him alone enough. Anyway, there was this interesting article in Variety today that we wanted to talk about a little bit. It's about toxic fandoms, everybody's favorite topic. Toxic fandom, how Hollywood is battling fans who are, quote, just out for blood, from social media boot camps to superfan focus groups. The superfan focus group is a thing that...
Sounds like a threat.
A little bit, because it reminded me of like basically the superfan focus group of one that Doctor Who employed in the early to mid 80s.
He's still reigning terror, as it were.
He is. Ian Levine, yeah, used to be sort of the unofficial the fan continuity expert for that John Nathan Turner would talk to. Is this okay? What about this? No, it doesn't make sense. You have to change it. You have to make reference to the 10th planet, or it's not going to make any sense. Okay.
I think nobody has access to right now.
Yeah, it's missing, and you can't watch it, but I remember it, and so therefore you have to make it just right.
I mean, that's basically what toxic fandom is now, except at a much larger scale. And racism.
That's true. It's mostly racism.
And
the sexism.
Sexism, too. That's always... Yeah.
All the isms and phobias, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard a lot about, Star Wars having this sort of thing directed at it. I have to admit, because maybe I don't want to seek it out.
Yeah,
so I don't know how, was Doctor Who review bombed at all over the curse? Because there's a black man as Doctor Who now, and so therefore that's considered controversial to some people. I
haven't looked for it. I wouldn't be surprised if it was.
Yeah,
because people are terrible, basically.
Some people are terrible. I know. Even the Star Wars Outlaws game, I feel like, oh, there's a woman lead character. Oh,
yeah, you and I both played through the main story, and there's endless complaining on YouTube, and I'm like, I don't see any of these problems. I'm having a great time, and it's cool. Like, what's the problem here?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, that's taking these idiots seriously in the first place, which is probably a bad idea. But
it's fascinating to see that a lot of these studios are basically bracing themselves for this is going to cause a stir amongst people who like to make death threats to Leslie Jones because she was in Ghostbusters. I
don't understand how the multi-billion-dollar company is going, some guy in a basement doesn't like us. And you cool kids didn't care about this before. Why do you care now? I mean, obviously the reason is it can make a big stink and possibly affect the box office, but that's a terrible reason to change anything. What we were talking before this about that, and I said to Stephen, I'm going to make a hockey analogy, even though I know nothing about hockey.
Okay.
Would you put a fan in charge of a hockey game, which is very similar to a studio in that it's a multi-million-dollar endeavor driven primarily by talent and people with incredible skills that still lose sometimes? It's basically the same thing as a movie or TV show, but you wouldn't put a fan in front of that because that'd be crazy. So why would you put a fan in charge? I'm a fan. Nobody should put me in charge of any movie. That'd be a terrible idea.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, of a movie that you're a fan of,
Yeah, as Russell T Davies said, he's like, the 10 seconds you just thought about it, I've been thinking about it for 24 hours. He's right. I don't have to like what the end result is. The fact is, he and everybody else have worked a lot harder on it than I have.
Yeah.
Fans don't know as much as they think they know, and they don't want what they think they want. a lot of the time.
Right? I know. And I honestly, I don't think they should be listened to at all.
No, I don't think they should. There should be venues like this and many others, and people completely disagree with us on a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
They should be able to vent about it, but making a TV show or a movie or a game, for that matter, different because fans yelled about it is the worst possible reason to make something. Like, that's just dumb.
I know. Chris, do you have any thoughts on the matter? Any? I mean, I know that you've wanted to personally influence Doctor Who's trajectory on several times over the course of this podcast history. No, yes.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. So, stuff is out there. I try to avoid it. It annoys me.
Yeah, same.
It's impossible to avoid, of course, but spend any time online, I guess I should say. It's impossible to avoid, but I don't know. Just people like things. Let them like them.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't have to like them. Like I've seen Bridgerton. I've never watched Bridgerton. I don't care about Bridgerton. Why would I yell about Bridgerton? I have never seen it, and I don't care about it. So why yell about it?
Well, because
I've not watched it either.
They often cast actors of color in roles that canonically were probably not people of color. So therefore, that's wrong, and they must be. Yeah. You know, they have to
With
be
Rings of Power,
chastised for it. The
I
Rings
ran
of
into that where people were yelling about there being black elves, and I'm like, it's all made up, guys. Like, there's nothing to get wrong here. Like, they can do whatever the hell they want. Like, it's all pretend.
Yeah, you know, like if you watch the Lord of the Rings movies, which controversially I think are way better than the actual books.
Oh no, that's not controversial. They are way better.
I know. Well, in this house, it's controversial. But you know, I think about like when I remember reading the book after I saw the movie and going, there's not a lot of.
This is the big revelation here.
I know. Several years ago I did it. It was an experimental phase for you, Warren. Don't get, I guess so. Yeah. Don't get too crazy about it. And like I realized, like 99% of the dialogue that's in this book is not in the movie. Like, you know,
no.
And it's like, so you're okay with that. You're okay with them switching all the words around, but you make someone a different color than the person you had in mind when you were reading a book, and that's suddenly wrong.
I mean, I've got a friend who isn't a toxic fan per se, but he was a big Dune fan, and he didn't like the fact that they gender switched, and I don't think he really cared all that much about the race switching, but there's a certain character as a male. Everybody in the first Dune is basically, except for the wife, his wife or concubine or whatever she is. And I think she is technically an actual concubine. I'm not slagging her off here. That's what she is in the book, which again, actually gives you an idea what this book's all about. But anyway, in the movie, they changed it to a black woman. And I'm like, what difference does this make? None whatsoever. He's like, well, but in the book it says. I'm like, well, who cares? This isn't the book. It's a movie in 2024, not a book in 1958. Like, it doesn't make a difference.
No. It sucks that studios have to think about such things when they're making and casting movies. You know, like they have to have this in the back of their head, like, oh, no. What kind of crap are we going to have to deal with this, you know, like they'll probably think, you know, yeah, this is bold. This is great. We're doing great. But they're probably in the back of their mind going, there's going to be a lot of, you know, from a tiny amount of people. Because, you know, as the VP of Star Trek brand development says, the vast majority of any fandom are casual fans, which is great. And they don't care about this sort of thing. But then there's a tiny little subset of people that just like, nope, we have to have it this way.
Yeah.
And it's wrong if it's not that way.
And to crap on the studios for a second, they've been rightfully accused of queer baiting, and I'm not queer, so I don't know if I'm qualified to say this, but they do that where they go, okay, here's your picture of two people kissing that we can easily cut out of the Chinese release or the Saudi Arabian release or whoever is going to be offended by this, right?
Yeah.
And we will definitely cut that out, right? So, I mean, and also, what a bunch of cowards. Like, just come on, stick to your convictions here if you have any to begin with. Like, just try to stick to something, like, for once, instead of cowering in front of a bunch of dorks with beards, mostly.
Yeah. Although, to maybe wrap it up, I think, Warren, you sent me this offline about basically someone saying, well, you know what? Studios wouldn't have to worry about this as much if they weren't relying so much on existing IP to make their
That was
movies
both
and TV
Kelly
shows.
Cooper, who wrote Megan, and our friend Riley Silverman said it too, independently of that. So yeah, but it's true. Like, if they didn't make the same old crap over and over again, and I saw some random person on the internet say, yeah, stop making things that make you huff on what you felt like when you were a kid and you're 50 now, which I'm as guilty of as anyone, being in that age bracket, and maybe things will get a little better. And they're right. Just make some new crap, for God's sakes. I know it's not going to make any money. Who cares? You're losing money anyway. Just make something new.
Yeah. It's also tough. I mean, to give them credit, it's tough to just think, oh, we'll just think of something brand new. That'll be great.
Yeah.
You know,
I say that these are multi-million-dollar enterprises involving hundreds of people. It's easy for me to say that, much like it's easy like for a fan to yell about things.
Mm-hmm. As we wait for like the 15th season of new Doctor Who, having just, enjoyed 26 seasons of Doctor Who.
But I was thinking about this. Doctor Who gets around it by renewing itself all the time.
Yeah.
So it's a little, I wouldn't say it's completely immune from this, but it's a little less, it's a moving target, I guess.
Mm-hmm. It can be. It can be. I'll tell you what. Some Big Finish stuff before we bring Toby Hadoke on to talk about all things VAM. There's some Big Finish stuff coming in the spring of 2025. The first one we'll tell you about is Doctor Who: The Lost Stories, Genesis of the Cybermen. Now this story was written up, like sort of summarized. But what's the word I'm looking for? Illustrated. There we go. By Andrew Skilleter in the superb book from 1988, Cybermen, which is, I hold Cybermen for me right up there with like Peter Haining's A Celebration from the 20th anniversary.
The GOAT, let's be honest here.
He is, and David Banks. I mean, I love David Banks, and he's a great Cyberman, and it's just such a great book. I loved that. I still have that book, and so that's where I remember first hearing about that. So when Big Finish says, "Oh, we're gonna make an audio version," except it's with Peter Davison and the crew. Peter Davison, Janet Fielding, Sarah Sutton, Matthew Waterhouse, and then Nicholas Briggs as a voice of the Mondasian Cybermen. Personally, I think it would be great.
Was he in the show? It must have been. Was Nick Briggs doing the Mondasian Cybermen in Dr. Falls and all the rest of it?
Yes, he was. Yep. So it only makes. I think he was doing that in Big Finish anyway, because for some reason Big Finish doesn't use the 80s, aka the best Cybermen anywhere.
What is behind all that?
I don't know. There's a controversy there, though, that I need to get into. I can see why they would not use them for this, the Genesis of the Cybermen.
Well, of course, yeah.
But it's controversial. And
to us,
I think
two or three people.
Yeah, I know. I think Liz Miles is very upset as well.
Okay, well, that's
and she writes for Big Finish,
fight.
so I feel like she has she can swing a hammer in the Big Finish office.
She's our person on the inside.
Yeah,
to get to the end of this. Let's just gestated mystery, the genesis of this mystery of the Cybermen.
We need David Banks and Mark Hardy to guest again, because they only did like a one-off once, I remember, as new Cybermen. Anyway. That's coming in March. It doesn't have any cover art, so we can't try to guess what it's about. Planet Crinoid has a very minimalist cover art. Planet Crinoid is starring Reese Shearsmith. In Planet Crinoid, a brand new horror series set in the Doctor Who universe. That's coming in April of 2025.
That sounds cool.
I know, but. And there's like a pod, no touch pod, that sort of pod, except it's green on the artwork. So we can talk about that, but that's about it for artwork wise. And then in March, there's a 12-part Big Finish Doctor Who story, Doctor Who: The Fifth Doctor Adventures Hooklight, parts 1 and 2, coming out in April and May. And they also don't have cover art for us to tell you about. I'm so sorry. So I
gotta say, Hooklight sounds like an indie game from 2007.
I gotta see that. Yeah, I gotta see that. So there, and there's a lovely photo though. There's in the links there of the season 19 TARDIS team posing for a nice photo there. So.
Yeah, I see. Peter Davison has his arm around Matthew Waterhouse, and I'm like, the feud that was mostly in my head is over.
It's over. It's gone. Yeah, just like Actually, it's somebody else's hand. It's Jason Hay Gallery.
It's Tom Baker's
it's
wax
Jason Hay Gallery in
hand.
behind. Thinking we just need to show that you like each other. I'm just gonna sneak behind you and put my hand on your shoulder. That's not how it went. All right, is that it? Anything else? Anything else you want to talk about? Any videotape formats, Chris? Anything you want to add? No, all good.
Pneumatic. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, pneumatic tapes. All right. Well, after the very short break, it's our good friend, Toby Hadoke, talking about all things Doctor Who collection Blu-rays. Hope you enjoy this chat. It's a tradition on this podcast to just find some sort of an excuse to have our guest on the show for a yearly check-in. This year's excuse is the upcoming Looking for Dursley documentary that's coming out in the season 25 set in the UK in late October, and hopefully soon after in North America. But I'm sure we'll cover other things as we come to them. It's a pleasure to welcome back once again Toby Hadoke to Radio Free Skaro. Hello, Toby.
Hello, Stephen. I'm doing a first for because, as you say, I've done many Radio Free Skaro interventions. In that I'm wearing glasses and shorts, both of which are new since last we spoke, and in fact, if we've spoken ever, because I started wearing glasses in February because I was a little short-sighted, and now I can't do without them because I'm getting old, and so I've also been for a run today, hence the shorts, because as I'm getting old, I'm trying to stave off the inevitable. So, God, it's all change in Hadoke Towers. But what doesn't change is that it's a delight to speak to you.
Listen, I was blind at age 7, more or less, and have been wearing thick glasses and/or contact lenses every day since. So it's not necessarily a sign of age that your eyesight has diminished. You could be sitting at the back of the classroom as I was, and for some reason failing at every single school assignment I had because I couldn't see the chalkboard from back there.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
No, well, I've always been okay, and then I was struggling to read the temperature on the washer. When you're doing the washing, and you go, does that say 30 degrees, 40 degrees, or whatever? And I was having to sort of do that thing where you take it further and further away.
Yeah.
And then I did this test, and I'd done one not long ago. Well, I thought it was not long ago, and I said to my partner, I said, it wasn't that long ago, and my eyesight was fine. And she said, that was before the pandemic. Oh God, the time's flown. So went and had one, and as I say, I went, oh yeah, that's improved things slightly, and now I cannot do without them. So I think it's the glasses' fault. I'm now I can't do without them and have to leave different pairs strategically lying around the house because I also don't know where I've put my glasses.
Right. And you refuse to wear them on a string or something hanging around your neck.
No, I do have them on a string, but I get mocked for that. But I like to think I can pull off glasses on a string. No, I do have them on a string, but then I take those off and lose those, or they get tangled up with other things and I'm in a hurry. So then I have to do that thing of, do I cut loose, or do I just take a thing that's strung around loads of other things? Anyway, I'm sure that's not why you've dialed me up today. I'm sure this isn't the prime content that you were hoping for.
Well, it is for some people, and we like to appeal to as many audiences as we can on this show. I did mention Looking for Dursley, the documentary looking back at the life and career of Dursley McClendon, who appeared in Remembrance of the Daleks, sort of the next episode, the installment of the Looking For ... series that you've done. I've lost count with how many you've done. I know Peter R. Newman was the first one, but how many others have there been?
Yeah, and it was devised as a one-off, and indeed that was originally going to be a double header of Let's Put Flesh on the Bones of Peter R. Newman and Mervyn Pinfield, the writer and director combo who were both dead before fandom existed, and Chris Chapman wisely narrowed it down to go, well, Peter R. Newman's the more interesting because we do have stuff on Mervyn Pinfield. Though we didn't always. There's a chapter in the Doctor Who file called The Man Who Put the Science into Doctor Who, and it's about Mervyn Pinfield, but there's a picture of Verity Lambert, because I think she wrote that chapter or is interviewed for it, because they didn't even have they didn't know they had a picture of the man that the chapter was about. So he was obscure for a bit, but we gradually found bits and pieces of him and a couple of pictures, and his son's around. So anyway, Chris narrowed it down to Peter R. Newman and came up with the title. And that was only short. People forget as well, that was only very short. That was only about 22 minutes, that documentary. It was, it was mostly delving through records and then speaking to the family. Whereas the ones that have gone on later on, we've interviewed more people who knew the person. So we did Looking for Lenny, which came about, the Lenny Main one, which came about because I had interviewed Rex and Pat Robinson, Dr. Tyler and Mrs. Ollis, and I'd also interviewed Mr. Ollis, Laurie Webb, and realised that they lived within a stone's throw of each other, even though they hadn't actually seen each other for ages. And Wendy Danvers, who plays Amazonia in, the lady who says, "What Doctor? Doctor Who" in Curse of Peladon, she also lives around there. So when I said to Chris, look, we should do Lenny Mayne because they all live close to each other and they all work with Lenny. And Pat had told me that she was still in touch with Lenny's twin girls because they'd kept in touch with Francis Pigeon. So I said, I think we could probably do a documentary there. And I knew Andrew Morgan was described Lenny Mayne as his best friend to me once. So I said, we could really do one here. So was that the second one we did, Lenny Mayne, maybe? And so that was because, well, look, we've got the ingredients. It's not that we don't know. And he was somebody for whom we only, I think, had one photo on location for Doomwatch, I think. And I remember when they were putting the Hand of Fear documentary together, there was a sort of call out to people like me that, are on a sort of list of people that are contacted, and they go, does anybody know where there's a picture of Lenny Mayne? And somebody else came up with that, but there was one, but we didn't really even know what he looked like particularly, or what he sounded like. And during the course of the research for that, we got obviously more pictures, and actually I think it was Richard Bignell knew that there was a sound recording of a studio session of Monster of Peladon, so we got his voice as well. So I think there were enough that we knew we had the ingredients there to justify doing that. And as Chris said, because the headline was he was the guy that died in the boating accident, it was. And this is how he sold it to the daughters. We're not going to really go over that, or we're going to start with that and leave it behind and reclaim his life from the manner of his death, because the headline about Lenny Mayne is he's the one that died in the boating accident. Well, let's get that out of the way and actually, reclaim him, which again is Chris's beautiful way of approaching something and doing something that is just that little twist in the style that you do it in that just makes it more human. And as I say, Chris gets the credit for that. So that was the second one we did, and then is the third one we did looking for.
David.
Oh, no, then we did David Whittaker.
Yeah.
David Whittaker, which I thought was not the best idea, because I thought we knew really about David Whittaker. He's a legendary figure. We've had photos of him. Again, actually not that many. And we found loads more. But I think that was a case of, well, we do know some, and what we know, we knew fairly early because he'd done an interview, and we'd been conscious of him when he died and all that. But it meant we sort of stopped looking in a way. So this way we went back and said, well, we've got this that we know, but there's probably loads more. So let's restart looking, and again sort of claim him from what we already know. And I think what emerged was, he's the sort of architect of Doctor Who as we understand it, but also a quite a sad end, and some mysterious stuff that went on with the Writers Guild that gives his life and its end a rather sort of tragic aspect, which is sad, because I'd always seen him as this sort of rather grandfatherly figure, and you think these people have wonderful lives because they worked in British television and wrote for Doctor Who, and how marvellous it must have been. And of course, real life is very different. And then, so that wasn't my idea. That one was really popular. We got loads of lovely feedback from that, which again surprised me, because I thought people might just go, "Oh, really?" But we know, and that was a nice.
I mean, Simon Gary got a nice book out of it too, so it's
yeah. Yes, he did, and Simon was very, very helpful.
Yeah,
with all of that sort of Writers Guild element of stuff, and Simon's great. I love Simon. So yeah, that was a very pleasant surprise. And again, that ended up being a bit longer than we'd expected it to be. And we had that student of his from Australia, didn't we? And all of that stuff, which was really interesting. And going through some of his personal effects, and that little clip as well that was on the Marty giving Marty Feldman the Writers Guild Award. So we've actually got his voice, but just for 3 seconds. And so then it was Chris's idea to do. Chris Chapman to do Looking for Dursley. Yeah, so the first two were my idea. The third one was Chris, but Chris is always, I think, on the lookout to say, well, look, if we've got a series of things, let's see if we can add to the series. And we've recently added the revisited to that. We had the cookbook, and then we went, well, this is a good way to look at who's Doctor Who as well. And again, that was one that I hadn't really expected to be much interested in, and has ended up being one of my favorites. I thought that was that came out very, very well. But yeah, Chris said, why don't we do Looking for Dursley? And I was like, well, aren't people going to just go, he's an actor in one story. I mean, with the best will in the world, what who cares? I mean, I care because I love supporting actors, guest actors from Doctor Who, and I'd make a documentary about a man who was in one episode, let alone one story. But I'm aware that I have very specific peccadillos. But of course, with Dursley, we had the fact that the main character in It's a Sin had been based upon aspects of his life. The fact that the story of a young man whose life and career are cut off by AIDS is the story of one man, but it's also a universal story for that generation. And indeed, I mean, we'd never have been this crass, but and I would never be this crass, but I could do a podcast of people from Doctor Who succumbed to AIDS. There's a that Venn diagram has a lot of a lot of crossover, But so in a way, we're tacitly telling the story of a lot of those actors that you might look at and you go, God, they were only 43 when they died. What happened to them? We could have been making a Looking For about any of them. But I think also because he plays a really good part, and he's so alive and he's so beautiful, and also Russell T Davies knew him, so that was another thing to go, well if we do a documentary that Russell might be interested in being on, that's something that gives it an extra frisson as well, because he's so, irrespective of what he represents for Doctor Who, it's what he represents for television, but also the bottom line is, as you'll see from him on the BAFTA red carpet, he is such a good person to interview. He tells you a good story. Now, that's not saying he makes stuff up, but he makes anything he says, his observations and his empathy and his sort of sense of the sort of dramatic course of real life events, he can put across in conversation. So all of that stuff made for the idea. I wasn't sure it would get commissioned, but I think nobody's really told that HIV story in the sort of frippery of a Doctor Who box set. So I think it's a sort of important note to strike, really, and to my eternal gratitude, as with all of these things, Russell Minton, I think, looks at the offers that he's got, weighs up the balance of the content, and goes, if we can have a bit of light-hearted stuff here, and we can balance it out with that. And I think that's why the range is so hot. It's amazing, isn't it? We've had all this stuff on DVD. I've just been to the BFI again, had a wonderful time, and there's a real sense of anticipation about these box sets, which are repackaging stuff that we're so familiar with, because there's so much love has gone into all of this extra material that we really do try and make good, and try and make as good as it can possibly be, and stuff that people might not be expecting. But then when we do it, go, oh no, of course they should do something like that. Chris's wonderful Graham Williams one, for example, where there's already a documentary on the Key to Time that sort of it's about the season, but it's sort of about Graham Williams's producership too, and his wife is interviewed on that, and you sort of go, well, that's probably the last word on Graham Williams. No, Chris goes back and he pitches that so sensitively to the family. It was sitting behind them at the BFI watching that documentary was such a moving and rewarding experience. And I really have to say, he's a friend and a colleague, Chris, and somebody who sends you annoyingly pedantic WhatsApp messages at 7 o'clock in the morning that you could just Google. But nevertheless, but he's also a very humble and a modest man. The way that he gets what he gets for some of those documentaries, because he really handles the talent, and the talent can sometimes be people who are reticent about taking part, or people who might have emotional reasons not to take part. Remember, Lenny Main's daughters both lost their dad in a boating accident when he was 11, and their mother never allowed them to speak of him in the house again because she was so upset. And we go to them with a documentary called Looking for Lenny. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were understandably very, very reticent. And he made that happen because he was really, really sensitive in the way that he dealt with it. And they were so happy afterwards and so grateful. And I saw Graham Williams' family at the BFI talking to Chris, and he got them the ticket. He organised that screening and said, could the fans come along because it'd be nice for the family? And he made sure that he bought them all a drink and that they got special and that they were looked after and that sort of stuff a filmmaker doesn't need to do. And that's why the range is a little bit more than just we make these documentaries. And I think sometimes Chris perhaps doesn't get the credit for that side of things because he would never say that he's done that sort of thing. But he's, I think he's a champion in that regard.
I mean, I'm just looking at, the fact that it's season 25, the Dursley one. I know you've said this a lot on Happy Times and Places about how recent Sylvester McCoy who feels, even though
it's not that long ago.
Clearly it's not.
I've got off-air VHSs. They're that recent.
Yeah, but relatively recent to compared to some of the other documentaries that you've done. Is it easier to sort of find more people with remembrances on the subject this time, Dursley McClendon, than perhaps searching for grandchildren or people who might have encountered him, like a David Whitaker or a Peter R. Newman at one point? Did you find that more people knew Dursley for this documentary?
No, it wasn't particularly easy, and there were people there were musical theatre people that we got in touch with, but something has also changed. It used to be very easy to get Equity or BBC royalties people to get in touch with people, and something has changed in terms of GDPR, and I don't think autograph hunters have helped to. I know of autograph hunters who've written somebody a letter care of Equity that Equity would very kindly forward, and then if they've not heard back within a week, have rung up Equity and given them shit and going, well, have you lost my letter? I've forwarded it, and they go, no, we're not a forwarding service. So they stopped doing that, which meant that then proper researchers struggled to get hold of people because Equity stopped forwarding letters to their home addresses. But now, even if you're doing an official BBC project, Equity now go, well, if they're not a member anymore, we won't forward stuff. And the BBC royalties people have a certain kind of freedom of information thing that's changed. So in the old days, you could at least go to, if you were making an official project, you could go to an official body. But now it is much trickier than that. And in fact, one of the actors we tried to get hold of, I basically looked to see if we'd got mutual friends on Facebook, and lo and behold, a guy I was in Midsummer Night's Dream with about 5 years ago was mutual friends with this guy, and I said, can you forward a message to this guy? And then there was another guy who I just happened to have met again when I was doing a play somewhere, and he was in the play afterwards, so I knew who he was. But we weren't friends on Facebook or anything, but I was at least able to go, I was in Sherlock Holmes in Trouble while you were doing 12th Night, the Royal Exchange, blah, 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 blah. And as it is, he said, he'd remembered Dursley a bit from Follies. They had been at drama school together as well. But sometimes it's about telling the story. And I took that back to Chris, and Chris said, well, we've got someone from Follies because we've got the musical director. So we don't need a musical director of Follies and an actor from Follies. We need an actor from drama school. So it's not just about getting people, it's getting people for each chapter of their life. So it might be, so for example, we talk about Remembrance of the Daleks. So of course we get Sophie Aldred, and Sophie's going, oh, but he was really friendly with Karen Gledhill, who played Alison. She'd be able to tell you loads about him. And it's like, yeah, but if we've only got 7 interviewees, we can't interview 2 people from the same thing. So it's not necessarily as straightforward as all of that. It's having, so you might actually have somebody who knows him a bit less, but from a point in his life that we need a witness to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we also, and of course that he did have family, and some of his family are on it as well. So there was that element, but then the interesting thing, not the battle there, but what we had to overcome there was that because it's come hot on the heels of It's a Sin, they were very mindful of the elements of It's a Sin that weren't him. Because It's a Sin wasn't a biography of Dursley McClendon. It was a story made up by Russell T Davies using elements of a lot of people that he knew, one of whom was Dursley McClendon, and his main character, is brought up. It's from the Isle of Wight. Dursley was from the Isle of Man, and obviously the reaction of his parents and his family in It's a Sin were quite harsh and difficult and cruel, and they want, and there was a certain amount of, in my sort of pre-chat, well, I said, I always steal a chat because we tend to, we do it on camera. That's what you see is what we're doing. But while the cameras are being set up, I just have to establish a rapport very quickly. And they're saying, oh, and I said, look, there's no wrong. What I always say is, there's no wrong answers. We can always go again. Say anything you want to me. Don't say anything you don't want to say. If you say something you wish you'd said it in a different way. So I just try and reassure them and all of that. And I noticed that in the build up to that, they kept saying, yeah, and the other thing about It's a Sin was that, he didn't do this, he didn't do that. And I had to sort of say, look, I suspect anything you say about It's a Sin won't be in the program, because this isn't a program about It's a Sin. This is a program about, I said, we'll probably say there were elements of It's a Sin, but this isn't your chance to redress what an Isle of Man newspaper might have inferred from It's a Sin and then, made a connection with Dursley or whatever. That's not what this is. And they relaxed a bit then, because I think that had been so preoccupying them. But also I think they wanted a forum to say that. But when I sort of had to, quite straightforwardly say, I don't think that's going to happen, so we may as well not go there, they immediately sort of relaxed a bit and started talking about their family member instead, and it was and didn't feel the need to be setting the record straight. We set the record straight in a different way by actually showing what his life was, without then saying, so this bit of It's a Sin is incorrect, because of course in It's a Sin's defense, it wasn't trying to do that anyway, and also we'd never be able to show clips from It's a Sin anyway, because they'd be far too expensive.
Right.
So it's a different. There's always things to sort of negotiate, and they're sometimes done, while the light meter's just getting to the right reading or whatever. It's because we don't have time to hang around, and I do literally meet people on camera. But no, in terms of finding people, no, it's still hard, and it's still, and we don't have researchers. I think one of the reasons I get the gig is because I've probably got a head start when it comes to some of this. So you're not only getting a presenter, you're getting somebody who goes, oh well, he was in that play with that person, and I've got that person's phone number or whatever. So you save yourself a skivvy if you've got me in front of the camera as well. But I enjoy that archaeology as well. I liked, for example, finding it was a guy that we didn't use in the end. In fact, I don't think he even replied and has since died, actually. But this musical theatre actor who was in a thing that we ended up not covering. But I was quite pleased that I'd got a contact for him, having done a little bit of late night internet rabbit hole archaeology, which is the sort of thing I sort of do anyway. But but when it's when it then ends up in a program, it's very satisfying.
I'm going to segue to something else here, just because all this sort of in-person stuff and hand-holding and talking directly with people is something you're obviously very good at and you relish. And it's something that I don't think happens anymore when it comes to commentaries, because I think most of, if not all of your commentaries now, once back in the olden days, pre-COVID, they were done in the same room. You bring people in and it'd be all huddled around microphones watching the same thing. And now they're almost exclusively done on Zoom. How has that changed your experience doing commentaries for the Blu-ray range?
Well, it's sad because it means I don't have photographs of me with the people from various Doctor Who stories. The advantage, though, of course, is that had we done the Web of Fear pre-COVID, we wouldn't have had Tina Packer on it, because she's in the States. But because we, and in fact, when we did Power of the Daleks, we went to France for Nicholas Hawtrey, didn't we? I mean, John Kelly and I had a day trip to France to interview Nicholas Hawtrey for Power of the Daleks. So it's, I mean, it means it's a lot cheaper, which means you can be a bit bolder with your choice. In the old, you wouldn't want to book a studio for more than a morning, so it's whoever can make the studio that morning, and you go right through. Whereas with some of these ones, like the Celestial Toymaker, I think Paul and I did 3 different sessions, I think, and we can because I don't get I don't charge for an extra day or anything like that, and you're just paying the the contributors for the episodes that they do. So long as they're segregated, you know, it means that you can have that person on that day, that person on that day. Same with Galaxy 4. And with Galaxy 4, it meant we got Sue Willis, who was in Australia, you know, and so you can bring people together who it might be hard. We got Jeff Kirkland, didn't we, for Faceless Ones, and he's in the States. So it meant we can be a bit bolder and get people who, you know, and largely if they're abroad for interesting reasons. So that gives you some extra things to talk about. But for me, it's, you know, I'd love to be in the room with the people, and there's nothing nicer than seeing astronauts Williams and Schultz meet again for the first time in, you know, God knows how many years, and sitting next to each other at the ages of 87 and 90, I think they were. You know, there's nothing nicer than seeing Deborah Watling, Fraser Hines, and Sonny Caldinez all hugging each other because they're like Skittles in Russian dolls of a different height sort of thing. And all of that stuff. And, you know, being in the room, I think is always easier. You know, I think I'd have found those Tom Baker one-on-ones a lot easier if I'd been in the room with him. We had to deal with the technology as well, and the fact that his wife Sue was sorting out the technology, and then, you know, it was sort of me and him with Paul sort of, you know, overseeing everything, and that's quite daunting. You know, to interviewing Tom Baker is daunting at the best of times, but interviewing Tom Baker when he's having to watch a television program on a screen and listen to me, and, you know, his wife's there's making sure the technology all works, but yeah, you know, so I think that those were, you know, I really had to knuckle down with those, and it's not the same as being in the same room. And you have an advantage when you're in a room with somebody because you can whisper to them in between. You can establish a rapport, like I just said about, you know, Dursley's family members. Well, the camera's being set up. You can do so much work to make people relax in your presence that you can't do when you're at the other end of a microphone, and you can't give somebody a reassuring wink or, you know, or a little bit of small talk about, you know, I saw you in this particular stage play that's got nothing to do with Doctor Who, and they go, oh, okay, that's brilliant. It's obviously not just about Doctor Who, so okay, but relaxed a little bit, or, you know, right. Or I worked with so and so who's a friend of yours. Oh, do you know so and so? Oh, now you're not just a Doctor Who fan, you're an actor as well. You know, it's just the little things that you do that just make somebody just not be quite so sort of self-conscious or awkward, or, you know, that just frees people up and relaxes them. You can't do any of that, which is a shame. And some of them have actually been seat of the pants. I don't think you can hear it on. Well, you might be able to now. Here's a test on Celestial Toymaker. I think it's one of the episode 4s. Something, I always charge up my laptop so it's ready to go the next day. I always make sure I'm fully 100% and blah, blah, blah. And I charged my laptop, and so I'd not bothered to bring the charging wire in. And then I noticed during the Celestial Toymaker that my battery was going down and down and down and down. So between the episodes, I said to Paul, I'm just going to get my thing to plug in. And I plugged the thing in. And for some reason, and it's this laptop, and it's plugged in, and it's fine now, but it does on occasion. And I think it might have been something to do with the plugs, but whatever. It was plugged in, and it wasn't charging. And then I thought, well, is it the plug? So I swapped the microphone point for the charging point to see if that would work. And then they couldn't hear me on the microphone, so it was obviously something wrong with the point. So I thought, well, I can't. There's no point looking for another plug. So I then swapped back, and it's on one of the episodes of Toymaker where I mean, we literally get to the end of the commentary, and I've got 2% of battery left. And you know, I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but I'm just like, I thank Christ for that, because I didn't know what I was going to do.
Right. Praying for that credit roll to roll just a little bit faster.
Absolutely. I've never wished for him to make move 2072 or whatever it is. Quicker. So that was a bit terrifying. And I normally don't have to worry about all of that. You know, I just turn up and somebody else presses all the buttons. But it does mean that, you know, we can be very imaginative. Look at the Abominable Snowmen one where we had all sorts of different people, and it means you're a bit more relaxed about people's timetables, and also just in terms of workload. I don't have to travel to London and back again. I can I can pop into my little booth here and plug in and then get on with the rest of my day. So. There are advantages and disadvantages, but in an ideal world for me who likes meeting these people, I would much rather be in the room with them. But I think we've done some really good commentaries on those. I mean, frankly, when we were doing Celestial Toymaker, I didn't think we'd even get a commentary because, that we were really struggling. And then actually in the end, I thought we got a really good mix, but it was touch and go, and there were people who said yes, who then decided they didn't remember enough or weren't well enough, and we had precious few, as it were, but we got there.
Not that I expect you to divulge any of the actual specific things that you're working on now in regards to the range, but have you been keeping busy recording stuff for future Blu-ray releases?
Yes, and this is, well, I mean, there's something I can say that I think is probably quite useful, because I'm very mindful of not giving stuff away, but I know that Doctor Who contributors at conventions don't seem to realize what what N, D, and A stand for when you put them all together, because they go, oh yes, I've done a documentary on blah blah blah. I've got a making of in the can for a story for a release that hasn't been scheduled. It was just to do with availability of personnel, and I think gap in Chris Chapman's diary, and I think a pitch that had gone, yeah, okay, why don't we do that? Because we are conscious now of future-proofing of the range, of getting more stuff in the can so that nothing's having to be done last minute. So there's a making of for a story that is not scheduled in any way, shape, or form, that's done, that I think is really nice. I've done another weekend with a Doctor Who companion for a release that has not been scheduled. I don't even know what story that documentary would be on the disc of, and there's plenty of different options for where that could go. But again, that was put in the can, and rather dreadfully for me. I watched the graded version the other day, and I'd clearly been enjoying. Well, it was a sunny day, but so it wasn't Christmas. But I'm fat in it, basically, is what I'm saying, Stephen. I'm a big old lump of, and so I'm actually recording another weekend as I speak in the next weekend with and my God, I've been running every other day. I've been counting my calories. I am never again going to watch a Doctor Who documentary in which I waddle. So that's just really, because I know that's yet to come out as well.
Right.
So there's one of those in the can and one of those imminent, about to do. I've got another documentary I'm making that would be for another period of the show's history that I'm doing before Christmas. There's another looking for, a figure from Doctor Who, pardon me, for the box set that is after this one, that's in the can and is lovely, and I think has turned out very nicely. I mean, they're all sad, aren't they? Because everyone dies at the end.
That's true. You're never looking for someone who is well known and lived to a ripe old age.
I'm never looking for somebody when I knock on their door and they go, "Come in, we're having a party. Yes. It's going to be lovely." And actually, I don't think I've ever been more shattered than doing that Dursley one, because, of course, because quite often with those interviews, I don't interview people that knew the person when they died. So, for example, with the David Whittaker one, I didn't talk about David's death with everyone. Carol Ann Ford didn't keep in touch with him. The student from Australia lost touch with him when he left Australia. So you only talk about his death with the people that they're sort of told chronologically from the person's beginning to their end. But with Dursley, because his death was such a key heart of what the documentary was about. It's a slightly different format in that sense, in that everyone sort of comes back to talk about his death because everyone was cognizant of his death, even if they weren't friends with him at his death, although most of the people we interview were still friends with him at his death as well. And because he was so young, and because the AIDS virus was such a terrible thing, every one of those interviews, required a lot of sensitivity, talked about a lot of difficult things, and you come out of those, emotionally shattered, even if only on behalf of the person that you've just had to ask to go over a really terribly sad event in their life. So that one, I remember, I've never been quite so shattered emotionally doing a documentary as the Dursley one, because every single interview ended with his death in a way that the other ones don't. So yeah, the next one is a bit more straightforward, but is a really good one, and again, I think tells us some interesting things about a Doctor Who figure who's a bit known but also a bit mysterious, but an important contributor. And I'm penciled in. We've got a couple of ideas for documentaries next year as well. So basically, I mean, I got Chris sent me a list a while ago saying, look, what documentary ideas have we got for the rest of the range? Now, that is not because the rest of the range is imminent, but I think any ideas that could benefit from being done now, or that, again, we could just get done in a hiatus, why twiddle our thumbs and then suddenly be panicking in 2 years' time. We're always on the go, and we've got ideas for every set, and Chris will pitch those to Russell, and some will be accepted and some won't. So you pitch. Chris will pitch more than he will get made, and some of those ones he pitches will involve me, and some of them won't. And I just sort of hope that one of the ones that makes it through is one of the ones that I'm on. But I'm definitely on the next box set, and I think I'm on the box set after that. And as I say, I'm on a few releases that haven't even been scheduled. So and I've got some ideas that I haven't put in the bag that I need to send to Russell just in case, because I don't want to get caught napping, just for small little featurettes or whatever that just might mop up some. There's for example a key 80s production person who's not been interviewed on any of the 80s sets, and obviously they're a dwindling resource. So you go, well, he's only going to be able to be on that one, so I better just pitch that, even if it's just we go to that person's house and interview them. Sometimes you can just be as basic as that. Well, let's just get that person on the set, a bit like the Martin Clunes one and the Leslie Dunlop. Let's just have something with them, because it seems a shame not to have them. And if they weren't on a commentary here or a documentary there, it's not too expensive to do something. But again, it depends if that person tweaks Russell's interest. But I hope this person does, because it's somebody that should be spoken to, really.
Well, I mean, I started that question sort of like saying that, see fans, this is why you shouldn't look too much into what Toby and or Chris and or other people who are making documentaries are working on, and try to zapruder what the next box set will be.
Yeah,
but now that you've dropped
don't
that
look
in,
at the pattern on the train seat that I'm on. I did one, and somebody said, and they correctly worked out what train I was on. But even doing that wouldn't have given them a clue to what I was doing, because actually after I got off that train, I was then put in an Uber that then took me quite a far distance that could have gone in any direction from Euston. So, but I mean, but look, that's part of the fun, and I think that's jolly and but also slightly alarming, because you don't think, because I don't want to be one of those people who is. Because I hate that when people who know something drop something to go, oh, look, I know something you don't know. That's not why I ever put anything on social media. But I know there's a sort of appetite for, is stuff being done? So, it's not, but I can't take a photo of the person I'm interviewing. So I have to put a photo of me on a train just to sort of say, oh, look, stuff's still going on.
Right.
And I hope that's taken in that spirit. It's not me going, oh, look at me doing all the stuff. But of course, because I'm not taking any photos that have any clues in them, people will try and find the clues anywhere. But again, that's I mean, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not. I will only be alarmed when somebody then catches the train,
Right.
and says, "Where are you going?" Then
Yep.
that would be awkward.
But even as you said that, my mind's going through 80s people, production people, haven't been on sets yet. What sets haven't gone out yet? I'm guilty of doing it myself, Toby. I apologize.
No. Well, I mean, speculation is all part of it, and I mean, I do it because
Uh-huh.
I generally find out obviously what box sets are coming out before a lot of people do, before most people do.
As you should.
There's
You're
also
working on them. Yeah.
But there's also there's a subset of us who are where we are on the chain, who will ourselves speculate and go, has Russell given any indication of what might be the next one? So we do it within our own little sort of back and forths as well. And go, is it worth mentioning this? Do you think that's coming up anytime soon? And there are people who are friends of mine, say, who know, who work on the restoration side of it, whatever, who will know before I know, who then will have to be a little bit sort of cautious when they talk to me because I'm not supposed to know at that stage. So it's all we all do it, but we all just do it at different stages.
Well, I look forward to seeing literally every single box set because by the sounds of it, you're going to be on most, if not all of them that are coming. And
I've loved it. It's been a real new. I thought we were done, Stephen.
Yeah.
I thought when those last DVDs were out, I thought, well, that was lovely. Wasn't I lucky to be involved? I did all those commentaries and a handful of documentaries as well. But I've really on these Blu-rays, I've sort of become an on-camera presenter, and that's because of Chris having a lot of faith really, and not just the the Levine one. That was because it was a pitch that came from me, although it was the idea of a fan on a train who suggested it to me. But it had that sort of slightly quirky element. But no, now I've been presenting making ofs because he just wants somebody to sort of hold it all together, and that's I've done. And I'm always sort of conscious going, oh God, are people going to get sick of me? And I wouldn't be surprised if they asked somebody else, and that's absolutely fine, but so they've displayed an awful lot of faith, and but also it means that I've done so much more, and I've been really, really flattered and satisfied with the sort of, because it's not been doing the same, even though we've had these ones that are all parts of a different series. They each have a different sort of character and style to them. So every film is slightly different, and it's been really, I've really loved doing the Blu-ray range. It's been like a sort of, it's been reinvigorating in the way that I've looked at shows and encountered people and filled in some gaps that perhaps had been left by things we hadn't done for the DVD range. And they've been, they make good programs. It has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
The actual quality of the cameras that they use, the camera people that they use, the editors that they've got, the graphics, but these are high-end products, and it's I just think it's fabulous. I think it's I think I'm lucky as a contributor, but I think we're lucky as I only suggest ideas for programs I would like to see. So the fact that we then get to make things that are things that I would, if they were on the range and presented by somebody else, I would be going, oh, this is fantastic. This is the kind of thing I want to see. I think that's really, it's really exciting to have seen just how much we've been able to do and how far we've been able to go.
And you're over half of the way there. Is there that's what feels alarming, is that there's been, like, we're literally, like, what, 13 or 14 releases in here for the classic series, not counting the oft-rumored Wilderness Years set that many people keep mentioning. Those who are actually, like Chris Chapman, Richard Bignell have both mentioned it, so it feels like that is probably a thing that's going to happen, or at least is being planned. I'm
full of. I mean, I don't know. I would hope they could. And I've got loads of ideas for documentaries for that. And again, and something that just sort of mops up either things that got missed out. Because wasn't there some studio footage from Keeper Traken and Fort of Doomsday that turned up after those box sets had come out and things like that? So there's I think we need a sort of a mopping up the loose ends set that can also be the Wilderness Years, and we can have the miscellaneous ephemera disc
right
on the end of that, and again, I think that would be one where people's inventiveness would really come to the fore, and you could go, well, and we have the latitude to maybe do a documentary about this or a documentary about that. So yeah, I'd be champing at the bit to do that, and I bet Chris would be as well. And I'm sure Richard Bignell has various things that he could bring to the fore in that as well. So yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And pop back the 2 episodes of The Crusade that they inevitably find between now and 2028 or something.
Well,
that.
I was talking to Russ about that, but he said I don't think this is. He said, what they'd do with that if that ever happened was that it would be the same design, and you just slot it in. You just take the disc out that's got the reconstructions,
right.
The one that's in the season 2, and you'd buy a new disc to replace.
Oh, good.
But it would fit it would fit into the jigsaw, as it were. I think that would be the plan. But you can't. I don't think that's an official plan, but that's certainly what he was saying when I said, "Oh, what would happen if you did that?" And he didn't sort of bat it off and go, "Oh no, I genuinely, I think that would be the way to do it." But of course, you can't base what you're doing on something that might never coming back.
Right.
You have to just keep doing it. I don't know why there's not been the black and whites. I'm presuming it's something to do with having time to fill the gaps or because obviously if something gets animated, they want to release that as a standalone first before part of a box set. But I don't know. That's guesswork. That is way down. No, that is way upriver of me. I find out quite late. Even with the animations, I find out fairly late in the day because I don't need to know until it's time to get a group of people together to do a commentary. And the Celestial Toymaker commentaries were done, weeks before it was due out. As it turned out, they were done like months before it did come out.
Right.
But that's a different story. but yeah, and we did the commentary, and occasionally, the animation would have a gap in it. And I was going, isn't this supposed to be out in 3 weeks? Oh, well, or whatever. But I remember that was left till the very last minute, that commentary. So I didn't really know about that until, relatively late in the day, as it was, as I say, it then hung around a bit because various bits and bobs needed doing to it. I actually loved that animation. I thought it really worked, and I'm somebody that 20 years ago was very much a purist and was like, it has to look like it would have looked. Well, It's never going to look like it would have looked. It's 2D animation, and I thought, thinking if any story benefits from, a reimagining in that way, it's Toymaker. And I actually think I have to say, I think I prefer the animated version to what we can understand of the original look like. I think the animated version creates the story I had in my head, which is this crazy nightmarish vision of a children's nursery.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I kind of like it. And I'd be intrigued to see further animated releases like that that represent.
I'm not sure it would work for any other story.
No, not as such. But that was, I think, the perfect marriage, and I found it quite interesting that I think the animation style was agreed upon before ever the giggle was even a concept, or at least known about by the Blu-ray people. So you would watch that and you go, oh, I see, this sort of tied it into the modern Toymaker in the 60th anniversary specials, but it wasn't even. So it's kind of a bit of serendipity there.
One of those happy accidents.
Yeah. You offered to issue a mea culpa, Toby. So this is your opportunity. Last time you were on the show a year ago, you talked about your immediately forthcoming books about Quatermass.
I know. What happened?
Why
has that been a year?
I don't know why that is, Toby.
Well, because last year it was supposed to be, we're going to get it out in time for the live Quatermass, which was a year ago last week. And I thought I'd be selling copies after that, I'd knock up a stall, and go, here we go. And then when it looked like that wasn't going to happen, it will be, well, no, first it was going to be, we'll get it out on the 70th anniversary, which was the July. No, it's not going to be ready for that. Okay, well, we'll do it for the September, for the live version. And there's, well, it'll be out for Christmas then. And I saw my publisher at the BFI, the launch of the season 25 box set. We must talk about the BFI events. They're delightful. And he said, oh, well, we're aiming for the end of October. And then he went, but let's say it'll definitely be out for Christmas. And then I haven't heard from him since. So, so I'm hoping it will be out for Christmas. Actually, that extra time has worked in our favor because I came upon a few things late in the day that are of benefit to the book. And that's been the story of these books as we've got along. So I don't believe in any sort of cosmic purpose, but actually, if I'd published these books when I should have done, they wouldn't have half the stuff in that they're going to have now. So hopefully no one will ever have to write any more books about Quatermass. But what it is the first book is solely the Quatermass experiment. And that's about 120,000 words. So it's a big book on the Quatermass experiment. And then we're hoping to do one a year. So then next year will be Quatermass 2. The year after that will be Quatermass and the Pit. The year after that will be the Hammer films. And the year after that will be Euston and beyond. And that's everything else from, the 2005 BBC Live Quatermass experiment to any abandoned, project. There was a live stage version. There's also this version that turned up in Australia of the Quatermass experiment that was made as a sort of students directing course thing. So we've got all of that sort of stuff to sort of mop up for the final volume. But the first three are pretty much completed because the first volume was going to be the first three TV serials. But then I'd got too much information, Stephen. So it was Stuart's idea to go, well, why don't we do one book on each serial? And there's enough content. The Quatermass 2 book next year will also have a chapter on The Creature and 1984, which are important parts of the story, which I was going to have to cut had it been a volume of the first three. So actually, again, spreading it out has, I think, benefited in terms of context. Although there's not a lot to say about The Creature because there's no production file and it didn't have a huge cast. But I've found some bits and bobs and some photographic material.
Ooh,
so
nice.
That's all very sexy. So I hope, Stephen, I'm not going to make a liar of this podcast again and say that I've seen a cover where there's an afterward that has been written that I have read that is excellent, and I'm very, very happy that the person who's done it has done it. And there's a forward by a most illustrious person, probably not who you would expect either. So that will hopefully give it a bit of luster to sprinkle on my beige. I'm pleased. I think I've researched it hard. I haven't just gone, that's a bit of stock footage. I've gone, I need to find that stock footage. And in fact, actually, one of the bits that has benefited from this delay is that I only about 8 weeks ago managed to identify 2 bits of stock footage that had really been perplexing me, and a series of accidents led to me to work out how I could do that, and I did one morning when I should have been doing something else.
I watched reconstruction of episode 8 of the Daleks Master Plan the other night, and as one does, and I thought, I wonder if we know about which stock footage might have been used in this, and can that be found, and that perhaps we could have technically a missing clip from the Daleks Master Plan episode 8 of the cricket match or something like that.
Oh, the cricket match. Yeah.
And that might be out there. So you're not the only one that thinks like this.
Because of course there's I think there are some misapprehensions about that cricket, because I think the scoreboard is stock footage, isn't it? But the cricketers themselves are extras, aren't they? They actually hire some cricketer extras. So it's not all, there's not footage from a match. or I think it's just footage of the scoreboard. I can't remember. I looked into this once as well, but only
Sure.
on a late night. I didn't write it down, so this is why I'm clutching for it. But one thing I did discover with Dalek's Master Plan when I was doing an idle late night thing is that I think episodes 3 or 4, episode 3, Devil's Planet. Always in the extras listing, they've always listed a couple of the actors, MJ Matthews and somebody else. MJ Matthews is also, by the way, Bill Matthews, who's in Doctor Who. Let's not get into that.
Right.
But he works in Doctor Who under 2 different names. But MJ Matthews and somebody else are listed as extras as convicts on the Devil's Planet episode. And that is a piece of what you'd call, mistaken repeating down the years, because they're listed as extras in the paperwork, and somewhere some fan decided, oh well, the extras must have been convicts who are hanging around with Kirkson and Bors and Garge on the convicts planet. And there is a female convict, maybe 2, who are the female extras. But the male extras, there's nowhere in the camera script for a male convict to be. However, there is a scene which involves Zephon having delegates moving away from him when he's about to get exterminated. So they're not playing convicts. They're playing either Salation or Malfa or Beus or one of those. So we've got another set of delegates played by another set of actors. And anybody who knows how, perplexing tracking the delegates across the episodes are, this is another piece of the delegates jigsaw, because they're not playing convicts. They're playing 2 of the delegates who are in episode 3, but we don't know who they are. I think it does mention in the camera script, but so will it be somebody with a platey mosaic face? Will it be somebody with chocolate buttons? Will it be the one with the fangs? Could the Christmas tree make a last minute rebid for glory? I doubt it. But because we know that there are delegates in episode 11, but they've never been listed as being around for episode 3, but they're definitely. And that was just me watching the episode and going, hang on, there's delegates in. Watching a reconstruction.
Yeah.
And there's delegates in this scene. Why have we not got any actors listed as delegates? And then I went and worked out and went, oh, those extras have been misapplied to being convicts on the Devil's Planet by somebody just making an assumption clearly when a list was made 40 years ago, and we've never questioned it. So sometimes it's worth staying up late at night and not paying your partner enough attention and not catching up on your accounts or tidying your office or doing that thing, because you can suddenly look at something in a different way and go, I've solved it. Well, no, I've not solved a mystery. I've just uncovered a different mystery. I just know that the mystery is different to the mystery that actually most normal people don't even know is a mystery. But anyway.
Well, okay. Well, since we're on this, I hadn't thought about going here at all, but I'm going to now, because you actually mentioned the Terry Nation Army video about it, about the making of Feast of Stephen, where at the end, Professor Webster is waiting to turn up at the end of the scene towards the end of the Feast of Stephen, and he finally turns up, and we don't know. It's played by an actor apparently called Albert Barrington, whose only known credit is this actor, Professor Webster. But of course, there's no visual material from this outside of the 15 telesnaps that Robert Jewell made. So, Toby, who, according to your best guess, or perhaps actual information, who plays Professor Webster? Because the loose canon makes it William Hartnell actually show up in the role as Professor Webster, and that's the joke. But I would love to hear what you think or know about this situation.
No, Albert Barrington was now, and the reason this was compounded because I remember when Gavin was researching it, he'd asked me at one point, and I'd done a little look. And Albert Barrington is not mentioned in any issue of the stage. Now, even the most obscure actor might get, if they were in, the Anglian Shanklin rep for 1 week only, would get, you would find listed somewhere. And then I think I asked Equity as well. I think I went on the trial with Equity. And he seems to have never been a member of Equity, which would make you go, oh, well, so he can't have been an actor then. But let us not forget who the director was Douglas Camfield, who actually, unlike a lot of directors, liked giving untrained actors a shot. Like, he he promotes a few stuntmen. Because I think Albert Barrington is also in a couple of episodes of Z-Cars,
Okay.
directed by Douglas Camfield. And also, I think, now I may be misremembering,
Okay.
but I think he's not listed on IMDb for appearing in Z-Cars, but I'm pretty sure he does do a couple of Z-Cars. I also think I did a search. Somebody did a search, or I talked to somebody. I might have talked to David Brunt about it. And he lived not far from Douglas Camfield. And I wonder if he was, some geezer that Camfield was giving a break to.
Right.
So I think Professor Webster was played by Albert Barrington.
Okay.
Albert Barrington is definitely, we definitely know who he was. I think we've got some birth dates and death dates and all of that sort of thing. And he's definitely not William Hartnell. But the best guess from then, he's in a 1967 episode of Z-Cars where he plays an uncredited tramp, which is also directed by Douglas Camfield and is also missing. He might have been a cameraman working on productions for Pathé, and it looks like, he was born in 1884 and died in 1970. So he was, he was dead before anybody got anywhere near him. So I wonder if he was somebody that Camfield knew, who was not averse to, because although it's an equity rule that and it was far more fastidiously followed in those days that you had to be an equity member to work on television and in theatre, people did still occasionally squeeze through, or people would get given provisional cards or whatever, or they didn't have spies, so if nobody reported anything, nobody would know. So I think Barrington was somebody that Douglas Camfield was trying to give a break into television, and obviously nobody was watching The Feast of Stephen and went, we shall snap him up for our new West End run of The Wizard of Oz or whatever.
Right.
But he was definitely real, and I think is this guy that was born in 1884 and died in 1970. Yeah. But that was a lovely mystery for a bit. There's another Feast of Stephen performer who I think we're right in thinking, because he plays quite a big part actually, Ingmar Knirp.
Right.
He is credited and in the Radio Times as Mark Ross, and Mark Ross doesn't appear anywhere else. However, there is an actor called Mark Rose who has similar sort of dates and actually only died a few years ago. And Stephen Griffiths, who's a very good researcher into actors, and Stephen Griffiths, Ben Jolly, and I tend to sort of pool our resources. And if one doesn't have information on somebody else might have. And it was definitely Stephen who led me to look into Mark Rose, who appears to be. And then I think Stephen spoke to the family as well, and showed them the sort of blurry pictures and said, would this fit in with his timeline? And they thought that he'd been in Doctor Who at around that time. So, but even his file in the BBC either hasn't got one or it doesn't mention Doctor Who. So we haven't got the definitive conclusion. But yeah, I think in Mark Knirp is actually an actor called Mark Rose who worked on television for a bit in the 60s and then stopped. And so the Mark Ross that has been listed, who has never done anything else, well, there's a reason for that, because there's no such person.
Look there.
So, yeah, so it's all just about sometimes looking at things in a different way.
Absolutely. This is why you're here, listeners. This is why you're here. We solve casting mysteries from Christmas specials from 1965 on this podcast.
That you didn't even know were a mystery and didn't care about.
No, but we do now. We do now. Anyway, I've stolen enough of your time, Toby. This has been fun and fascinating as always. Obviously, check out Happy Times and Places and Too Much Information, which as a Patreon supporter, I'm getting weeks, if not months, in advance, and I gobble up every single episode. So well done on keeping that going on a fairly regular basis over the course of the past 4 or 5 years now.
Well, we speeded up a bit with Too Much Information, which I'm very happy about. We've nearly finished The Keys of Marinus, for God's sake.
One story a year, essentially, is how it's been going. But yeah. Yeah.
But so maybe that will keep me going in my retirement. But no, we've got plans afoot to speed things up, so it's okay.
Excellent. Well, check that out. Also, I PVR'd this because I'm able to watch it and you aren't, but you're in the first episode of season 2 of Ridley on PBS.
Do I get the cliffhanger? Because I was trying to work it out, because I definitely in the script I'm the last bit before the third advert break, and I was trying to work out whether, because in the UK we get them as 2-hour movies, whereas you get them as 2 1-hour episodes.
That's
so
right.
I was wondering if I get the cliffhanger. Do I get the cliffhanger? Please tell me I get the cliffhanger.
Well, I'll have to leave that on a cliffhanger because I haven't watched it yet, but I will let you know when I do. What your appearance will be. But yeah.
Yeah, because I think I'm a bit of a and then I obviously do more in the next bit. But so I hope I'm in the first episode and not. Don't think I'm just in the second half. I think I'm in it enough to be in the first half. But it's I rather joyfully I'm acting opposite Adrian Dunbar, who was in the remake of the Quatermass Experiment in 2005, whereas I was in the live version in 2023. So you've got the Quatermass universe crossover of the live 2023 Full of Love with the live TV 2005 Detective Inspector Lomax. So it's a rare treat for Quatermass fans.
Did you corner him on set about his time on Quatermass?
I did, and he agreed to do an interview. But and then I saw him at the last night party, and he had sort of agreed again. But I think it's going to be one of those ones where I have to keep just dropping a what they call a friendly reminder, because he's very, very busy. But he was certainly happy to do it. And I mean, if I was cut from a different cloth, he gave me his mobile number, I would just phone him. But I'm not like that, which is why I will never be a successful journalist. Not that I want to be. But I don't have that killer instinct. I would much rather just send a polite email every couple of months ago. Could we do that 10-minute phone call at some point? And I'm sure it'll happen. I've got the in. But what's quite funny is that in that show, I'm in scenes with Adrian Dunbar, and I'm married to an actress called Christine Bottomley, with whom I've worked on a number of occasions. And when I first met Christine, it was after I'd left London, actually, and we discovered that we'd both been pretty much neighbours. We both lived on the same road when I lived in London. And we were talking about this to Adrian. He lives on that road too. So actually that scene has 3 people who all, about 10 years ago, lived within about 15 doors of each other, all 3 of them. And Midge from Survival lived over the road. So, I mean,
Will Barton.
What more could you want from a London street? But Christine and I have gone now, and so is Will, actually. So Adrian is the last survivor of that street. But yeah, how funny that we'd never actually met each other, despite all living on the same road at the same time. We only met each other afterwards.
Tiny country it really is when it comes to the acting profession in the UK. And indeed when you're living there. Well, Toby, this has been fun. Once again, I look forward to having you back on in a year's time to talk about the imminent release of the Quatermass book. But hopefully.
Oh God, no! No! Please. No. Let's hope we'll be talking about the second one.
Yes.
Let's hope we're talking about the second one.
Absolutely. Toby Hadoke, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Stephen. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Toby. It's always fun to have Toby Hadoke on the show, no matter what the reason for the season. It's always good. So
we'll have to have him on one day just to read the weather.
That would be awesome.
That's the weather
but where he is specifically in England.
Yeah, rain.
Nothing else.
Yeah,
well, dox himself. No.
Good point. Yeah, you got me there. Well, then London. Let's just say London.
That's true.
Unless he's there.
Let's just say Madagascar. I don't know.
He doesn't live in London. He lives in Manchester. He says so as much. He runs a comedy club in Manchester. I think it's
so he could give the Manchester weather without doxing himself.
That's true.
Big city.
Manchester's a big city. Good luck finding him. Don't try to find him. Don't try to find his
But
house.
the forecast is easy. Rain.
Come on, it's England's Calgary.
Rain.
Which I just made up.
Yeah, it is rain. It's just rain. Oh, look, rain again. And more rain. Because Manchester's rainy, I guess.
As Supertramp once prophesied.
Yeah. All right, that's it for this episode, this long, rambling late night episode of Radio Free Skaro. Next week, though, kids, it begins the Terry Nation Miniscope.
Disappointment in many chapters.
Part 1, where we discuss his first 3 stories of the Daleks, a.k.a. the Dead Planet. We never called that. The Keys of Marinus and the Dalek Invasion of Earth. All 3 of those we talk about. If you're a Patreon, of course, you've already got them. We've been putting these things out as we record them. So our first 2 parts are already out on our Patreon feed. And our Toby Hadoke interview was also on a couple weeks ago too. But this time now it hits the regular feed. So stay tuned for that next week. Terry Nation Miniscope. 4 weeks of Terry Nation, baby, for your listening pleasure. So there. That's also a threat.
It sure is.
Until next time, I am Stephen in Edmonton.
We're in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
So long for now.